Hello, I'm Tara Ruckman.
And I'm Stephanie Howe, and we are Control the Chaos EDU. Are you burnout? Are you feeling frustrated or overwhelmed?
Or maybe it's the opposite, and you're a go-getter and want to level up. Then it's time to dive in with real talk and solution-focused conversations.
Welcome to today's Control the Chaos conversations. This morning, or whenever you're listening, we're going to be talking about how to create an effective morning routine, which hopefully you are listening in the morning, because I think sometimes listening to podcasts right in the morning can just get your day started off right. But before we do that, we have a guest. And this guest, I don't even know how long I've known him, but we finally just met in person. I mean, I think we've known each other for at least 5 years, right? Like on Twitter, I feel like, and like through just different people and connecting online and virtually. And then we went to the Teach Better conference, which was still an amazing conference. When you're talking about a conference months later, that's a good conference, right? Like you're not just like letting it go. Like we're still talking about the things that we learned from people that we connected with. And when it comes to Eric Geis, he is just too nice. Like he asked me to do a SmackDown with him and he just killed me with kindness. And I'm like, not that type of person that like thinks that way. Like I'm going to just destroy you. And Eric's just like, oh yeah, Stephanie is like the best. And she does all this stuff. And I'm like, Eric, you suck. So I feel like that strategy did not work. And so as I'm watching Eric just build people up around me, and as he's at the conference talking to different people and like letting them know how amazing they are. And here I am destroying people's confidence because I'm like, no, I'm the best. Like I really took that to heart this past Teach Better conference. But that is Eric. He's always uplifting you. So if you're ever having a bad day, you need to just talk to Eric because he will tell you 20 things that you do great. And you will forget all the rest of the things that you do terrible at. So I appreciated that about Eric. Also, he just celebrated a birthday. And so if you are not following him on social media, his partner in crime, Nick, or Edu Best Nick, went in and created some fun scenes about Eric, I guess, and put his photo on things and made him feel like an old guy. So, Eric, I just want you to know that I really do appreciate you, and I appreciate how you build people up even in the middle of a SmackDown. You never said anything negative about me, even though I said so many negative things about you. But that's how you win. That's how you win people over, I think, is just with your charming, kind personality.
Yeah, I don't know if it's really charming or kind. I just, being an athlete all my life, especially being a pitcher, I learned to tune things out. And if you let other people get the best of you, they're winning at the beginning. So, as much as you think I didn't respond to your bashing of me and my ed tech skills, I guess, you know, I really use my athletic mindset to come in and do that. But one thing I definitely have learned over the years is if you want to get the best out of people, you got to let them know that what they're sharing is valuable. And I mean, I don't need to tell you that. I don't need to tell Tara that. You guys have a book. You do a lot of awesome stuff. But, that's just my mindset. That's how I try to do things, especially in the professional world. I try to get the best out of people because if they're doing their best, then I probably will be feeding off of their energy and doing my best as well. So that's just kind of how I think about things.
Yeah, and I think that's a good mindset to have. And so one day, I think it was like the first day of the conference. We were down at Starbucks and Eric just happened to follow us everywhere we went at this conference. He was just following us around.
In all fairness, he was like leading podcast and we were giving. He wasn't like following us for no reason, right?
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
he was recording and we were giving little tidbits. which was fun. Yeah, so this was actually the first time I got to meet Eric, and I was like, Eric, who? And then by the time I left after 2 days, I was like, Eric, like, I can't wait to do another conference with you. You just have that energy about you that attracts people. And, the conversation that we had are like, oh, I can't wait to share that. Oh yeah, I can't wait to share that idea. So it was very exciting to meet you and be a part of Teach Better. I can't wait to get to a new, and of course, I do have to add that we have some commonalities being from the East Coast, so that there was a connection there. So,
Well, I felt like you were my anger translator when it came to Stephanie. Like, I would say something, and then you would be like, "He's really saying this, Steph, so take that." And I appreciated that. That was good. We had a lot of fun. I mean, Steph became Edu Besties with Phil Strunk, and I felt like Tara and I became Edu Besties, which was part of my strategy too, because I know it bothered Stephanie during the throwdown.
Yeah, and he
Oh,
would be
yeah.
like, your friend is really good. I'd be, your friend is really good. She knows her stuff. Still saying all those positive things to me too.
It's
Yeah, I don't
all
even want
about
to
it.
talk about Phil though, because he didn't even vote for me during the SmackDown, and he attended. Tara at least wasn't there.
Well, Phil and I sat down for a lunch, and we had a good conversation. I feel like that conversation really, brought him and I together. So yeah, it was over bread.
Yeah.
It was
We
over
even talked
bread.
about that too. I think we that was one of the bits, we became family breaking bread together.
We did become
Yeah,
family.
it's
Yeah.
amazing how close you get to people at these types of events, especially if they're ran the way that conference was ran. I mean,
Hmm.
the the importance of social networking at conference is definitely there, and they definitely amplified that. So that was awesome.
Yeah. So when we went into the conference, it was like the first day of the conference. We went down and there was a Starbucks, and we just started sitting and just chatting with each other. And what we learned really quickly about Eric is he had a morning routine. But his morning routine wasn't just like everybody's. Like Tara has coffee every morning. I get up and I listen to podcasts every single morning when I am my morning routine. So Eric had just some insightful things about his morning routine that we had to make a choice board because he does so many different things for him. And so he's going to share about his morning routine and what it kind of looks like, because I do believe that if you have a morning routine, your day is going to go a lot smoother, not only just in your classroom with kids, like having a set structured morning routine with them, but also as an adult. And I've learned too, if I don't make my bed, my day is ruined. I'm mean, and I am just a hot mess. And you could probably be like, Stephanie, you didn't make your bed today. And I'm like, nope, I didn't. And that's just part of my routine, right? And I know that's simple and crazy. But Eric, what is some of the things that you do for your morning routine?
Well, first off, you and I aren't that different because I am very calculated. My routine is very calculated. It's organized. It's probably the most organized thing in my day. If you ever listen to Nick and my podcast, That Tech the Podcast, you would note that he always tells me how much of a disorganized mess I am and how much of a neat freak he is and how organized he is. So this is probably the only thing in my life that is completely organized. But I wake up just like everyone else. I put on my pants, take my shower, brush my teeth, all that. But I want to start my day off with some type of self-improvement or reflection or both. So the first thing I'll do is for the week, I don't have a set schedule when it comes to Monday's podcast, Tuesdays this, and so on and so forth. I just pull together a whole bunch of resources throughout the week, and I have this big giant collection. And then when I wake up, I'm like, you know what? Today feels like a podcast. So I go over to my podcast player and I play the next episode there. And what I did is over a long period of time, I started getting recommendations from Brian Carpenter, his Fresh Air at 5 podcast, and I start bringing those in. And then some are connections, like Steph and I knew each other from Twitters, from throwdowns, things like that. I found out that she had a podcast, so I started listening to that. And then I talked to somebody during a professional development. They had a podcast. I bring that in, and then I kept like this little educational podcast journal, which I turned into a blog post, which I'll give to you to put into the show notes. But there's like 45 different podcasts. Every year I update it, so I have a new collection. I'll update it in June. But it's a bunch of podcasts that I get value in that I want to share with everybody. So it might be a podcast day. The next day might be a TED Talk. And, some of the TED Talks or TEDx talks, whatever it may be, they could be some of the most popular ones, like Sir Ken Robinson, How Schools Kill Creativity. If you know anything about me, creativity is what I am focused on in schools. So it might be a TED Talk. Do you want me to keep going here? Just go through these 5, or you want to
I have a question.
Yeah.
So as you're talking about your podcast and your TED Talk, do they always revolve around education, or do you do just other general self-improvement stuff?
For the podcast, they're typically within the educational field. However, I will venture out into business and public speaking and professional, knick-knack niches that might be useful to me as an educator. Like, I wish I would have. One of the first podcast episodes I listened to is how teachers are like actors and actresses. Like every day we get to pick out what persona, what personality we're going to have at the beginning of class. And you could be a stand-up comedian. You could be a serious person. You could be someone that's doing a monologue that is the most sad, sappy thing in the world. Whatever that's going to connect with your students, that's what that podcast was all about. It was not an educational podcast, but that was my reflection. A teacher is a lot like an actor or an actress, getting to be up in front of everyone, getting to lead, and whether you want to lead as a listener. I like to try to be a teacher that listens 80% of the time and guides 20% of the time. It's hard. It's not easy, but that's my main goal, because a lot of times students, when they talk, they can improve themselves just from hearing themselves talk a little bit. And then by you listening, you can kind of guide them in the right direction.
So do you plan for that then? Like intentionally plan to get that 80-20 mix?
Like I said, it's tough. It's kind of something that you have to work towards. I always use the term chasing the unicorn. That's like me chasing the unicorn there. I never get to 80%. It's just I get so involved in what they're saying that I want to contribute, and I have to sometimes give myself a slap in the face, let me know to just be quiet and listen. So it's tough, but you can get there with work at it for sure. So yeah, I mean, Ken Robinson is a good TED Talk. If you haven't listened to that one, I listened to one recently, Amy Cuddy, Your Body Language Shapes Who You Are. And when you think about these, it's so true. And this is the reflection piece that I was talking about. I mean, just look at the title there. Your body language shapes who you are. Like if you are someone that slouches and you're like in the corner and your arms are crossed and everything, that says something about you. That shows students that maybe you're not the most personal person in the morning. And by the afternoon, maybe you got your 3 cups of coffee in and you're smiley, happy, and you went home and made your bed and came back to work, and things are all good. Well, it says a lot.
Well, hopefully if that's happening, then I have you in the afternoon if you were on my schedule.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
I 100% agree with that. Like in retrospect, so I teach crisis intervention, and we talk about people see your body language before they hear your voice, right? So if your body language, and We all know what we do. What assuming does, right? But you can assume a lot about a person and their body language. And we can read that body language, not just from ourselves, but from what our students, when our students come in the morning, sometimes we're able to see how their day is going before they even say a word because of their body language. So it's not just about recognizing our own body language, but then observing that body language in others, because then we can learn about, we might need to say hello or greet a student a little bit differently based on the way they're walking down the hallway. Are they normally a social kid walking down the hallway and hanging out with their friends as they enter the building? Or are they coming in and their body language, you can see on their face, they're not smiling, maybe they're not talking, maybe they're slouched, like you said. And now that may change the way we greet that student in the morning, just looking at the way their body language. So it's kind of like a twofold, right? Recognizing our own body language, thinking about it in that terms, and what are we putting off to our kiddos, but then additionally, what is our body language? What are our students' body languages telling us? So I love that. I'm going to have to go and listen to that one for sure. Great recommendation. I'm excited.
I mean, when you think about it, Nick and I co-teach a podcasting course, and one of the first lessons that we do is we say, okay, either go with me or go with Nick. We're going to show you the audio recording stuff that we have. We're going to show you the equipment, some techniques and stuff. And we just let them divide themselves. I usually have 3 people and he has the rest. And why is that? Well, I'm 6 foot, broad shouldered, bigger guy. I look like a silverback gorilla. And he looks like the young high school student that, is ready to just have fun and chill on a surfboard. So what I have to do now is I picked up on that. So I do like a little dance at the beginning, or I make myself look a fool. And I get a couple more to my side, which is nice. But, I do have that personality, which brings me into like the next TED Talk, which is Susan Cain's The Power of Introverts. I always thought I was an extrovert. And, I really am probably the extroverted introvert. That's probably what I would classify myself. I have to be around people who I know, who I like, who I can relate to, that I know I could relate to, maybe someone that knew me even through someone else, and I'd be comfortable, but sometimes I have to work to get to that level. And I think I alluded to that to both of you one of the first nights at the conference, that there's like 150 people in this room. There's all these loud noises. I need to go outside. And, we went outside and hung out, and I felt a lot better out there. But by the end of the conference, I didn't care who I was behind or who I was around. I felt like I've seen everybody. The noise didn't bother me as much. I mean, maybe that's just me turning 40. I don't know. Maybe that's just the oldness in me. But that's kind of where I was. Maybe it's just because we taught from our basement for 1.5 years, and that's what I turned into. I don't know. But regardless, I had to work myself through some situations that I didn't feel 100% comfortable with. And I love doing that because I feel like I can learn from that. But that's what all these TED Talks are about, is taking something that may not relate to your everyday skill set or whatever, and just have you think a little differently about it, or see how you can use what they say and apply it to teaching, even though they're a business person, or, they're a guy from the circus that performed as a clown for 70 years. Well, guess what? As a teacher, we could use some of that funniness, some of that humor to get the kids, to get them on your side. So we're, sharing something. So, so podcast, TED Talks. The next one kind of goes with it, and that's listening to presentations and tutorials, things like that. If you have not checked out Rick Wormelli, his YouTube videos, which I'll also link, they're amazing. I mean, some of the stuff that he talked about 7-10 years ago, we're just now catching up to, like the grading systems. I agree with him on his grading systems and the homework policies and things like that. He's been talking about that since 2005, and now all of a sudden we are adopting this stuff. So, and he's very animated, and he's really good. Uh, and another one, just since the conference, is CJ Reynolds. We met him at the conference, and he's actually 35, 40 minutes away from me. CJ is pretty awesome. His videos are unique. People like them, and I see why. Because you know, I think I relate to him because we weren't the traditional student. We needed a little extra X factor in there to keep us interested. And he's really bringing that to light, and he's showing how students thrive with that X factor in his class. So presentations, tutorials, just thinking a little different, and then you reflect. So that's my third one. My next two are well, my next one is read a chapter. So I've been getting a lot of educational books, and some of them are not educational books, but I try to take something away from each book. Sometimes it's more than one something. Sometimes it's a lot of somethings. Some of these books are like Aspire to Lead by Josh Stamper, The Lazy Genius Way. I thought that I could relate to Lazy Genius. I mean, I like the way that sounds. So I read that one. I picked up some productivity tips there. Edu Duct Tape, just because I really like Jake Miller's podcast. So I wanted to hear what that book had to say. One that's not really educational, but it is A Walk in the Woods. But I've read the book, but I just listened to the book on tape. The book on tape is amazing. It teaches you about the Appalachian Trail, but there's also a storyline in there where two guys are walking the Appalachian Trail that have no business walking the Appalachian Trail. The one guy is not in any shape whatsoever, and the other guy just wanted to do it by himself, but wanted to take somebody with him. But there's a lot of different aha moments in that. Another book, Positive Mindset, Habits for Teachers, Shifting the Balance. I'm reading yours, Control the Chaos. I told you before we came on here that I just I just read chapter 7, which was really you writing about my son, my middle son. It was pretty awesome. It's just that some teachers need to take a step back and try to figure out why kids are acting a certain way. Is it because they're really being defiant, or that there's a disconnect there and they just don't understand the directions? And I think you both put that into perspective and, really describe my son through and through in that chapter.
I got to tell you, so leading off of like thinking about teachers like trying to determine, defiance or not defiance, I had this like aha moment with another coach the other day. I was in the hallway, and the student had engaged in some behavior that was not school appropriate. And, I was listening to the teacher say, I'm really sad. You really made me feel disappointed. And I like felt this like shiver in my body. I was like, no, we did not just say that to our kid. Because I thought to myself, so if we have a student that is struggling with reading, or has a reading goal, or has a reading deficit, do we say to them, I really am disappointed that you can't read this passage, right? We don't say that to our kids that struggle with reading. We don't say, I'm really disappointed in you and you're making me sad. You can't read this. So when we get to the bottom of what the deficit is, if there is a deficit and we've determined it's not because they're being defiant, it is some kind of underlying deficit that they need support with, they're already dealing with a deficit. Let's not shame them, right? So I love that you brought that up, like that we talk about that in our book, because I think for us as parents, as educators, when we really think about, using that positive language with someone, but making sure that we are supporting the skill deficits instead of shaming them for the skill deficit, right? Because I don't know about you, but I have said to my own kids before, like, I'm really disappointed in the choice that you made. Where I could have said, how can I help you better next time to make a better decision? Or what strategy do you think we could use to calm down versus I'm really disappointed in your actions when I know that they were already struggling. So, thinking about keeping that in your mindsets and putting it in your toolbox, like just that small shift in words, because we know that a kid with struggling in math, a kid struggling in reading or whatever it is, we would never say to them, I'm really disappointed in you because you can't do that. So,
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. Me, that's the build up approach that I would take. All right, you read all these words extremely well. You nailed that. All right, what I've noticed is that we need to work on ST words, things that start with ST or CH, and you
yeah.
know that's one strategy. But what I immediately went to is I remember having a conversation with a preschool teacher, and preschool teachers, they're amazing. I don't know how they can control 15 little people in a room uh, as well as they do. But I know that they were assessing my son on shapes and colors, and he got a 5 out of 5 on picking out all the squares, and he got a 5 of 5 picking out all the shapes that were blue, but he got like a 2 out of 5 on picking out the blue squares. And I'm looking at that, and I was like, okay, so we know something here because on every single test that he's done two things that are separate 100% and 40% on the thing that combines the two laws or rules or whatever the directions were of the game. So my thing is you ask a kid do a blue square or show a blue square. He's obviously having trouble with two different directions. And, that's my kid. I love him for it because now he's going to think outside of the box and try to figure out, I don't know what this means, but I'm going to try. And that is a positive thing for him to try. But here's the other thing, ask him to pick out a square and then ask him, once he picked that out, can you make that square blue? I mean, it's a different way of looking at it, but still testing for the same thing. And then we could focus on the skill of trying to do two-part directions. So we're breaking it down. We're trying to show him we're modeling how to do one direction, then come back, and then make it blue. So it's two one-part directions rather than a two-part direction. And really, I mean, your book was kind of a parenting book for me. It's probably the first parenting book I read. I mean, that just shows you that I like figure out as I go. And I want to thank my wife because when it comes to research and stuff like that on kid behavior and stuff, um, she really helps me along in the parenting aspect of our kids. But that's how I learn. I learn from modeling. I learn from things like that. So we work as a good team when it comes to those types of things. But the book is great. It allows you. Books need to be used as reflection pieces. These types of books are not the ones that I've listed out are not books that are meant to be just read the whole way through. You're not getting as much value out of them. Chunk them down and reflect on each little piece, and you'll get so much more out of the book because a good book you need to be able to relate themes in that book or instances in that book to your everyday life. And sometimes you miss those themes or those relationships if you don't take a little bit of time to reflect on them. And that's why I choose to do a chapter a day. It just works for me.
And when we were in person, how much time did you spend on your choice board of morning activities?
How much time?
Mhm.
So, I mean, all these are different, and sometimes I choose what I do based on how much time I have. Like this morning, I knew that I had to come in and get ready. I teach first session, and I needed to get something ready. So I totally punted on my 4 activities, and I created something to share, which is my fifth one. It's like I always give my students, here are 3 things you could do to satisfy this requirement, but here's a 4th one. You could choose something else to pick yours. Because just like it doesn't fit my schedule, maybe it doesn't fit their schedule. So other ideas that I do is I write a blog. Sometimes it's just like, these are my top 5 tools to do this. And it's not really a blog, but it's something I share. So I create something to share out to other people. And Steph, to be perfectly honest, that's how you and I kind of got connected, is because you kept sharing stuff and I kept seeing you on my, like within my PLN of people on Twitter. Like I saw your stuff because they were reposting it. And I was like, all right, well, I've seen this Stephanie Howe, Miss Stephanie Howe 23, like 80,000 times. Let's see what Miss Stephanie Howe is all about. And it's because you decided to create something and share something out. Well, not something, some things. I mean, you shared a lot of things. And that's really how I got connected with you, is because you took a chance by making something and pushing it out to the masses for them to say, hey, this is the greatest thing in the world, or why is she sharing this? But and I've told you this, and this is part of the killing you with kindness thing, is that you know you think outside of the box. And when you think outside of the box, I mean, if we have a 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot box, you're like 18 feet that way, 37 feet that way, 45 feet that way. And that's what makes you unique, is because you're taking that box, that piece of content, and you're finding ways to shape it in 45 different directions that's going to relate with a kid that might need that 45 feet away from the box to relate to it. I don't know if that made any sense whatsoever, but what I'm saying is you're stretching the content so it's relatable to kids, or it's that particular way that you're sharing is being stretched so far that you have teachers that are comfortable teaching this way can use it, but also way over here can use it. It's like multi-purpose content. And I think that's what makes you stand out compared to some of the things that you see on certain sites that you have to pay for. Stephanie Howe, free content, go check it out. Or you should go to this site and grab something for a couple bucks. Your call. I don't know.
Yeah, and during the conference, though, you said you only spend 15 minutes.
That's typically. So what I do is I listen to a 15-minute episode,
Mhm.
and if I have time when I get into school before everyone's there, because I'm an early riser and I get there early, then I'll do some type of reflection, which is usually like 5 minutes. I usually speak into my recorder that dictates the notes onto my Google Doc or whatever I'm using. But sometimes I break it up. It all depends. I have to be flexible, because if I stick to, I'm going to do this 30 minutes a day, and I break it one time, for me that's a broken system. So I won't return to it because I know it's not doable for me. And with Nick and I's podcast, we've published one every other week since we started. Nick had a baby. Well, Nick's wife and him had a baby. And I was sick the week before, had no voice, but I had a little bit of a voice. So I did an episode on my own, which I absolutely hate. It was the worst experience in the world, was to do one by myself. And I did it because I know if I didn't do it, we would break that 2-week mold, and then I wouldn't go back to it. Then I'll be like, oh, we missed one January of 2022, or actually it was January of 2021. We missed one, so I can miss another one. I don't know. You can bend the rules, but don't break the rules. I guess that's
So you have a routine, a flexible routine.
Yeah, I mean, I wake up, I get ready for school, I wake up early, I go in. On my way there, I'll listen to a presentation or tutorial or TED Talk or podcast. But if I know I'm going to get in there really early and I don't really have anything pressing, I might say, you know what, I'm going to rock out to some music. I'm going to sing some songs in the car. Could be depending on how well I slept. And once I get in there, I'll read a book. Like this morning, I read chapter, I think it was chapter 8. Yesterday was chapter 7. So I don't always read a chapter a week either. I'll just throw that out there. Sometimes I read a chapter and it takes me 3 weeks to come back to it. Just depends on the week. Give yourself some option, give yourself control of the process, but be flexible in it so it's maintainable. Don't get mad at yourself if you listen to a 5-minute podcast and that's all you do that morning. Can you reflect on it? Do you always have to write it down? You don't. But if you want to bring it up in a conversation like this, then write it down, dictate it, save it in the vault. Do whatever you do to curate whatever you need to curate. But at the end of the day, first thing you did something that improved yourself. So that day is getting started off on the right foot, and you're setting your day up for success if you can do some self-improvement in the morning. That might just be some meditation. It might be some yoga. It might be whatever you want it to be. But start your day off right. That's the biggest thing. When I start my day off right, usually the rest of the day falls into place. When I get a rough start and I don't make the bed, I never make the bed. I don't know. But anyway, then
Isn't that the truth for all of us?
the rest of the day could be like it could be an uphill battle because you feel like you shortchanged yourself in the morning. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I'm at.
And if we model that for our kids, right? Because some of our kids struggle with that very morning routine. So us doing practice what you teach, right? Not practice what you preach, practice what you teach. So if we're teaching that morning routine to our kiddos and us having that morning routine, we're able to connect and be able to share with our kids in that way.
Yeah, and practice makes permanent, not perfect. You're always chasing perfection, but practice makes permanent. It helps you get that skill of routine, I guess. So I practice the same routine, and I don't do it on weekends. I do it a little bit different, personal self-improvement on weekends, like sleep. I mean, at least I try to. I mean, it's up to the kids whether or not they let me do that, but I sleep in till 6:45, 7 a.m.
Yeah.
on the weekends if they let me, and you just go on your business. You keep pushing through, but yeah, I mean, routine. Set a routine. Be flexible and be happy. Life's too short. I'm already 40 years in. At least that's what the cards keep telling me. I'm over the hill.
And that's what I love is your routine is only, set it for 10, 15 minutes every day. That's it. And if you have more time, great. If not, you got 10 minutes in. And I love your reflection piece because there are times where I'll come into work and there's someone sitting, in my shared office space. And I'm like, I was listening to a podcast this morning and they said that, and it just starts a really good conversation that we're able to kind of have rather than just like, how was your day? Or like, what are your thoughts on this? Like this person shared this idea, but I was just wondering what your thoughts were on this topic. And there's so many times where I do that because you do think about stuff and then you're like reflecting on your own life or your own teaching style or different topics that you might believe or disbelieve with. And it allows that conversation to open up as well.
Yeah, when you think about it, life narrative is really what drives us all. So what happens in people's lives, that's what people think is interesting. If not, why would we make movies? Why would we write books? Because in all that, there's narrative. There's narrative in everything. So if you can make connections to other people's narratives, you can really better yourself because A, you're making a strong connection between you and that person, but B, you can see how their life narrative, the lessons that you can learn from that to connect to your own and improve yourself. So everyone has something to share. It's just whether or not they're willing to share it. So if anything out of this episode, I just hope that people take a chance every once in a while and share who they are, their narrative, something that they like doing, their practice, anything like that. Because really that's how we're all going to just learn from one another and just be a better form of yourself.
I love your insight. I was talking with myself muted. Sorry about that. Haven't got this figured out from all the uh, the COVID relation, how I still am able to mute myself and not realize it. But our call to action this week is to follow Eric at Guy Scott Tech Ed and give his podcast a listen. He's got some amazing insight, positive things to share, and dive into one of his morning routine references and links that we'll be sharing on our show notes this week. And let us know what you think. Share something on Twitter. Tell us what you think of Ken Robinson or CJ Reynolds or his inspirational morning routine that he has helped us through. And we thank you for being here. And until next time, control the chaos.
Thanks for listening to Control the Chaos EDU. Check out the description for show notes.
We look forward to connecting with you on social media. Subscribe to the weekly podcast so you never miss an episode. Control the chaos. Until next time.